Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I'm joined today by Rebecca Peters of Reb Peters Press, and she is does all sorts of printing and design work down in Portland, and I'm so excited to talk to you. We're kind of talking, kind of setting up, and I do think just nowadays with the move to digital and everything, and really people valuing printed invitations or cards or other sorts of paper goods for your weddings or anything else. I think it's so important, and there's certainly tremendous value in it still. And so I'm so interested to have you come on and chat. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Rebecca from Reb Peters Press, and I'm the owner, operator, everything person. I'm the sole proprietor. I'll occasionally hire someone during busy times, but mainly Reb Peters Press is just me. And yeah, I do design work where I can help people sort of create their own design based on an idea they have, or sometimes they come with just a very vague feeling that they want. And so I'll kind of work with them on that. And sometimes they'll just come with a pre-made design that they've already created, and I'll print that. So really happy to work with anyone. And it's kind of fun to work with other people's designs too, because they'll create a sort of different style than I would. So it's kind of fun to see that in print sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's so hard because, like what I do, we see things, capture them. You really do have to kind of conceptualize and take it really from start to finish. And I've said before on the podcast, when my wife and I got married, there was very few kind of custom things we did. One was, doing really nice invitations and cards and, that whole kind of doing the paper kind of suite for our wedding. And, God bless our girl that helped us with that. And, we just had no clue what we wanted and trying to explain. And then, having to really put that obviously to paper and kind of come up with it. I mean, talk about, is that a challenging process? Obviously you've been doing this a long time, incredibly successful, but talk about just how does that kind of process work for you?
I actually really love that process. Like, I didn't imagine when I started this business that would be an element. Like, I didn't really think ahead about doing that part of it. I just thought mainly I'm a printer. And then as I, because I started off with my background being fine art, not necessarily design. And I ended up studying design to make this business work better, and came to really love design and actually love working with the people, and found that I'm actually pretty good at talking to people and figuring out where their two tastes overlap. Because with a wedding in particular, you're dealing with two people. Sometimes there's a mother-in-law also, or two mothers who are also weighing in. And so trying to find something that's gonna work for everybody is a challenge, but it's something that I actually like, and I'm surprisingly good at. And so there's only been a few times where it's gotten a little tense, where it was really hard to find a place where their tastes overlapped, and there's a little bit extra negotiation going on. But I don't know, for the most part, I have a process that kind of helps them have that conversation before we meet for a design meeting, if they're doing custom. And so for some people, though, custom isn't even the way to go. Like, some people are actually more intimidated by having to come up with their own thing, and would rather see examples of something that's pre-made. And then sometimes in seeing those examples, they'll say, oh, I like this, except could you just change that? And then they'll sort of realize more through seeing examples of what they like and don't like. What direction they want to go in, and then I'll kind of help just sort of make that happen for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we said it before on the podcast too, planning a wedding is so important, for the couple, not only obviously, the love and the marriage and kind of that whole thing, but just having to kind of meld your, likes and dislikes and opinions and influences and really kind of come together and plan something. And, I think there's plenty of couples that, oh yeah, we get along and all this kind of stuff. And then when it comes time to like pick a design or picking colors or picking, there's so many things then where you realize like, oh wow, like my taste might be drastically different or what I thought was good or not, right? And I'm sure you kind of deal with that firsthand as well.
Yeah, definitely. I had this whole like way to work to prepare where it's like, okay, talk about color, talk about style, because like, okay, is this going to be a casual fun wedding? Do you want to sort of let your guests know that? Or is this going to be more formal and traditional? And then there's their personal taste, because some person may have, they like their style is more casual and fun, but they're actually going to have a very formal wedding. So finding a way to sort of blend those two things is something that's actually doable. You can do that a lot of times with fonts. Like you can make the fonts more formal and the graphics a little more casual. And then color, obviously, you have maybe gray as a main color and then have a pop of an accent color to, liven it up a bit. But there's all sorts of ways to visually do that in addition to wording, So there's just lots of elements that you can kind of adjust to get a good balance of what the couple wants.
Yeah, I remember our friends got married in Italy, and obviously, it was going to be a big to do anyway. But then when we got there, the invitation in the mail, and it was like literally the nicest invitation I've ever seen. Without, and obviously we film them and take photos of them and stuff too. We thought like, wow, this is going to be, this is a really big to do that we got going on here.
Yeah.
And like you said, it because of kind of the formalities of that where, like our wedding invites were definitely, I would say, a little more casual, a little more bright. And, and I think like our wedding reflected that a little bit more.
Yeah. My wedding invites were primarily hot pink, dark blue, and gray with a pop of green. Of course, I had to have like lots of color too, because we're colorful people, and also, I am printing it myself, so doing 4-color wedding invites wasn't such a bad idea.
That's funny. Yeah, you also see, and I was just thinking too when you were talking about the fonts and stuff. When you get the thing, and it's like the family of, and they'll have like the person's like 4 or 5 names, like William, James, Henry, whatever the second, and you're like, wow, okay, this is also going to be like super formal,
Yeah, and a lot of times it can sort of depend too on the age of the couple. Like older couples are often paying for their own wedding, and usually you have that wording sort of on top there, depending on who's hosting the wedding. To sort of give them credit and a nod, like, thank you for helping us make this happen. And then sometimes, even if they are hosting the wedding, it's just too formal for the type of wedding that you want to have. So, and it's, for some people, it does seem more sort of old fashioned. And for some people, they like that more traditional thing. So just really depends on the vibe you want to go for.
Absolutely. So, we were talking, you've been doing this a long time. I think most of the guests that come on the podcast, obviously we like to, vet and make sure that established, but, we usually get people in kind of that 4, 5, 6 year range, having really got their, feet wet and kind of figured out what's going on. You've been doing this, obviously you said before you started your business, but since 2009, probably not the easiest time to start a business either, no. Just in terms of timing. So I want to kind of get, all into that as well, but maybe start out with, how did you get into design in the beginning? And we can go back as far as we need.
So, well, I didn't study design in school. I studied, printmaking, fine art. And so obviously art is a big part of design. But it's actually just kind of I would say maybe half of what design is. And I would say that my early designs definitely, I look back at them now and I'm like, oh God, I would not do that now. And part of that is styles change throughout time. Every year, sometimes, look at my own website and I'm like, oh gosh, I need to change the fonts on that or change the colors or whatever. But studying design just when I started my business so that I could do more design work, it totally changed the way that I look at the world around me. I mean, when I'm on a long car drive, I am looking at the design of all the logos on the trucks and all the billboards, and either like saying, oh, that's a great design, or judging them and oh no, you should have done this and that. But I don't know, it's something that I love a lot more than I would have thought. But yeah, it's definitely not where I saw myself going. We didn't even have computers at the art school I went to. There was like there were 2 computers in the library for writing your papers, but there was like very anti-design school.
So, where did you go to school at?
The San Francisco Art Institute.
And so what kind of compelled you to go study arts to begin with? Was it, something that you just growing up always, doodling and stuff, or what was kind of the inspiration to study that?
Yeah, it was kind of like going to be 2 paths for me, either science or art. And I love science, but I don't have a very good memory at all. So I thought, okay, let's go art. And art made me happy. So I moved to San Francisco in '98 and did my last 2 years of college at the Art Institute. And, looking back, I think I probably would have gone to a school that was more craft oriented, where I could have learned more skills. It wasn't necessarily a skill focused school so much as a, art for art's sake. And so I think that's kind of why I started off in the painting department, loving painting. And then I gravitated towards printmaking because it was something where they had to teach you skills. And I really loved the program there. And I loved the first time I got to make a print. So, you spend all this time making a plate, which is what you're printing from. And then you put the paper down and you turn this crank and it goes through the press and you peel back the paper and there's art. And it was just like this, like, I made art. And it was this very exciting feeling. And that with printmaking, you could make that same piece again and then adjust it and print it again and, make alterations to it. And printmaking in general, I found really exciting. And then it wasn't until after college that I actually ended up studying letterpress. I just went back to junior college for fun to take this class and got really into it and took 3 semesters of letterpress, and then just so happened to be at a time where I was needing a new job and was kind of going through a low period in my life. And a friend said, well, what would make you happy if money weren't an issue? And I was like, having my own shop. And I didn't even really think of it as a business. I'd never run a business before. I'd always done work for hire, been self-employed, but it's different from having a business. And so she kind of pushed me into doing that, even though it was financially challenging and scary. And I did it, and I've never been happier. Like I love working for myself, and I love working with my hands, and I just listen to audiobooks and podcasts all day and do what I love. So it's really I don't know. I can't express enough how much printmaking improves my life.
That's awesome. It's crazy to think that you were kind of balancing between that science and the art. I mean, talk about kind of using both sides of your brain. Mm-hmm. Where did you where did you grow up before you moved to San Francisco?
Southern California. So I lived there until I was 21, and then San Francisco. I lived there for almost 20 years, and then I just moved here 2 years ago with my husband. His family is up here, and that was a scary move too. I mean, I'd say this probably the scariest move. Moving when you're 40 is changing states and leaving, somewhere you've grown up, leaving where your family and your friends are is really scary. But I do love Oregon, and yeah, it's been interesting living here. And then I have a sister here two now. So that's been awesome.
Well, just and obviously having to kind of transition, the business as well, and that's always my greatest fear is having to move somewhere and then have to kind of feel like you're starting over again.
It was starting over, yeah. I mean, way more so than I thought. I thought, well, I'll just change my address on Google and Yelp, and I have, all of my reviews are 5-star, and I have lots of reviews. Like that's all I need. And I knew that referrals would drop off a bit. From my local referrals, but it was a lot harder transition than I thought. I think perhaps people go off more referrals here. I mean, that's kind of just a guess, but yeah. So it's been a lot slower rebuilding, and luckily, some of my old clients from California are still just repeat clients, so that kind of helps me out a lot.
Well, probably the one benefit too is obviously being able to work remote, and not. Do you find that you do a lot of stuff online with clients and aren't local, or is that a good balance for you?
Yeah, actually, I do a lot more work out of state than I used to. I mean, I used to have clients come to my home office to do design sessions, a couple times a week, and now I'd say it's more like once a month that I'm doing that, and a lot of it's remote, and even people who are local, actually, I'm dealing with more remotely. Just it's kind of more convenient for everyone's schedule. So I don't know if that's just something that would have happened anyway. But yeah, working with people out of state, it's interesting. I got a lot of work just through Etsy, people finding examples of my work on Etsy and then reach out for custom work. And I just think, wow, that takes a lot of trust, someone you've never met, because, it's a lot easier to work with a vendor who's local, where you get to see their face and talk to them and, feel reassured that they're not going to mess this up, because this is important and deadlines are important. Like, are you going to really have my wedding invites in time? I've had people come to me and say, you know what? I need my invites this week. I had this other printer say that they were going to be done by now, and I've not heard from them. And, have had, just hear people having horrible experiences with other vendors. And, I'm very often like, yes, I will, I will rush this for you. So a lot of my work, I am just like, it's an art emergency. It's a wedding invite emergency. And, or I tried to print my own invites, I got this like do-it-yourself letterpress kit, and, which I totally admire someone trying, but it's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. There's a lot of variables to adjust for. And so I've helped people out in those sort of like emergencies too.
Well, because you think about it, I mean, it is, and I don't think we even realized until it came time to like finalize and get, because we totally were the same thing with like our designer, and she said we got to have it done by this date so we can print it by this date, and because you need them to send out, and you think about kind of all the other stuff that you can figure out and finalize your design later, or the flowers over, but if the invites aren't out when you need them out to get people ready to go to the wedding, it is it's challenging. That's one thing that's pretty timely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people may not realize the amount of time that it can take for invites, and that there is a queue, that sometimes the turnaround is 2 weeks. My turnaround hasn't been more than 2 weeks since I've moved here. Usually it was 3 weeks sometimes previously, but I mean, I can get stuff done within like 5 days, but that's a rush, and that's pushing it. And just because sometimes they'll come and they're like, okay, I need these printed. Do you have the design? No. Okay, well, I need the design first, and I need the design to be in the format that I need. And there are some, limitations to what letterpress can do. So it's sometimes helpful before you even create the design to know what process you're going to do, so you can kind of keep those limitations in mind. And anyway, so it's just, there's a lot of variables, and I have to have the plate made, and the plate is made locally, but it's still like, a 24-hour turnaround for them. And I still have other people who I've promised to print things by. And sometimes some of those people are a little more flexible in their schedule and I can shuffle things around and I do what I can, but not always possible to do stuff like in the same week.
Well, it's tough because, yeah, like obviously everybody wants, like with us with like their videos, everyone wants their video next. And so I know like when I'm editing one and posting about it that there's, 5 other people like, well, hey, what's going on? And,
and they're excited to see it too.
Yeah. And everyone's, obviously, I agree. everyone's thing is always the most important to them, so it's tough to kind of balance that out. Yeah. It is funny that you were talking about kind of the DIY. And I remember one of our friends got married this year and they tried to do, print their own things. And when the invite came, there was like a printout like sheet inside. And we're like, okay, what the heck is this? Well, what had happened was when she went on, she designed it just online at something and printed it. Mm-hmm. And, they had all the instructions for like where to stay and like parking and something else, like all the, not like the date and time, but everything else they had printed in it, like printed them like a 1 inch by 1 inch block, like on this card. So it was like hardly legible at all, that you couldn't, without like a magnifying glass. So then she had to like just print it on a sheet of paper and throw it in, but they're trying to, trying to save money and whatever, but we're like, what the hell is going on here? We opened this thing up. And then I think she had texted my wife and kind of gave her the heads up or something because, you're trying to do what you can and then you end up, messing it up on the back end. So,
and not everything's going to be perfect. There's always going to be something that, you run out of time for to do just the way you thought you would. And it's hard. And people have full-time jobs and they're trying to plan this huge event. So without like an event planner, if you can't afford to do that, which a lot of people can't, it's like, it's a lot of work. And, usually it's your first time doing it. Maybe your only time doing it. So
yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
I want to talk about, who, obviously, we were someone that, kind of valued, doing custom work like this for our wedding. What are the clients that are attracted to you, that you find work that, that appreciate it? I see nowadays all the time people posting online about, digital signups or invites or emailing stuff or not, who is still really interested in working and spending the time and obviously money, but work to kind of get this stuff done.
Yeah. I think people realize too that, like you said, kind of in the beginning, a lot of things are digital. And I actually did really worry about that even at the beginning of this business 10 years ago, like, is this a dying art form? Are people really going to appreciate this? Is everything just going to be digital? And surprisingly, I've kind of come around in my opinion of that. I think that everything being digital has kind of made things in print even more special. I think it's increased its value and people appreciate it even more. And so I think the people who value that do tend to be more visual oriented people. Like for business cards, I print business cards for people and it's usually people in visual fields, photographers, designers of any sort. I think those people appreciate it. And also they have clients who are going to appreciate it. But as far as wedding goes, I think it's just, I think anyone who could afford it would want them, and I totally understand it's not in everybody's budget to have letterpress invites, but having, your own custom invites just designed, I think anybody would love that. It just makes it so much more you. And it's hard for me to relate to not wanting that, but it's hard. I'm also a visual person, so.
Well, it's funny because, like you said, even like the business cards. I remember for years, and still there, all these apps and stuff like keep all your contacts, or they had a thing that was like you could bump another phone and it would transfer, all these digital business cards. But I'm still out at events all the time when people ask for business cards because I remember, I print them every couple of years, and I remember I think the first time I printed a big batch, and I was like, this might be the only batch I ever print because, who the hell wants business cards anymore? But I mean, that's all. I mean, it's still it's a tangible thing. I think people can value. I have like really nice business cards. They're really thick, and I think people perceive value from that, or care, the care of the vendor and someone taking the time to do that. And it's the same with the wedding. If you're going to take the time to get this designed and this wonderful thing printed, it just adds that extra level of perceived value to it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think receiving an invitation that's printed from Costco versus one that is on really thick paper and really nicely designed, it's going to have a different sort of feel to it. Not dissing people who, digitally print stuff. I get it's not in everybody's budget, but like it has a different feel.
Oh no, we were not a cards family at all until I met my wife, and now my mom and brother. I mean, we all have to give cards because it's so valuable to my wife, and having that those tangible things every holiday, and thank you cards, and obviously when we got married, or when our friends are getting married, like that's something that like she so looks forward to, is like opening that and having that. I mean, I can't even, she's like the spokesperson like for that, just because of how strongly she feels towards it.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about every time you get a card in the mail, like that's handwritten on the outside with your name from someone that not like a business dentist wishing you happy birthday. It's like, it feels so good.
Yeah, I do laugh at businesses again. I get it from my financial people up here. It's almost like it's just automated, because it comes just one day before. It's almost like they know exactly what they're doing. What was it like, starting your own business? Was that scary to kind of, like you said, it's different working for yourself, but then being like, this is like me, this is what I'm doing. And obviously, it was a challenging time in the economy to kind of start a business. So what was that like?
Yeah, that was scary. And, it was one thing to get the studio and get my press. But right before doing that, I started a course in Oakland. They had a program called the Women's Initiative that's, I think, out of business now. But it was a nonprofit that would teach women how to write, what's it called? Not a business proposal, a business plan. And so they teach you all of the research that's needed into going out and looking at other businesses in your field, doing market research, deciding or realizing how much money you have to make to stay afloat, and just sort of taught you the basics of running a business. And that was something I never thought I would be interested in. It's just like, I'm an artist, like, I don't care about that stuff. But when it came to it, it's like, well, I became interested in it because I was like, well, this is going to enable me to be an artist professionally and to do exactly what I want and work for myself. And that made me interested. And just like design, like it made me interested when I could do it for print. And so yeah, I studied that, and that gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, I can do this. I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm extremely efficient. I'm hardworking. Like, there's no reason why I shouldn't at least give this a try. And, I kept everything really low risk in the beginning, super cheap studio in this like really janky warehouse in Oakland that was just forming. It was just like this huge warehouse, had 170 artists. Most of them were like Burning Man people who were building these huge art cars and sculptures, and different scene from me, but just kind of fun people to be around though. And it was a really great community and really sort of supportive. And so yeah, it was great to have that there. And then now being in a home business, when we moved up here, we bought a place that I could actually have my business. I can own the building so that we're not sort of at risk of being kicked out. Like in Oakland, we lost our apartment and my studio at the same time and couldn't afford anything in California pretty much, which I know is everybody's story for moving up here. But yeah, so it was a scary start though, not having a business background, but totally worth the struggle at first, having second and third jobs, and until I think it was maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years in, I was able to quit my my backup jobs, and that was scary and exciting. It was just oh, but this is my safety net. What if? And then every time I'd have a slow month, I'd freak out and be like, oh my God, do I need another job? And then just sort of realizing that there was a rhythm to it, and I'd have really slow months and I'd have crazy busy months, and it just took everything during the crazy busy months and relaxed a little bit more into the slow months, worked on other stuff. But
no, yeah, I mean, we talk a lot on the podcast about the artist trying to run the business, and it is really challenging. A lot of the people I talk to on here are really creative and not necessarily good at photographers that don't enjoy writing, or people that don't enjoy doing taxes like me, or people that don't it's a weird industry we're in, where you have to, like you said, really balance, you wanted to do the science and art, really balance kind of both sides of the brain. There's not a lot of other industries, I think, that running the business and kind of having to do all aspects of it, web design and printing and client stuff and emails, and it's tough to kind of juggle all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would love to be one of those businesses that could afford to have everyone else, just delegate and do that. But at the same time, I'm a little bit of a control freak in that I like everything to be done just so, and I have my system, and I don't want anyone else to come in and mess it up. And I hate to say that about myself, but it's true. I want to do things my way, and so I like just staying small so that I can do that. I have one press, I have one cutter, and I just work my ass off when I can. And, I'd rather do that and then just have a little bit of help here and there, and stay small.
Yeah, I laugh because I try to have, put on the perception, that we're, we do have our stuff together now, more, investment videos kind of more than we did years ago in terms of, the teams and kind of figuring stuff out. But, I still do a lot of it. And I remember last year we had a bride that was sending stuff over. She said, well, just, pass this along to the team or whoever is going to be handling this, and I'm sitting there laughing, and I'm like, that's, it's going to be me doing all that. There's no one, there's no, group of lackeys in the back that are going to be working on this stuff. I'm going to be working on this the whole time through,
Yeah. It's well, when I've taken a lot of or I've gone to lectures about running a business, and they talk about using, the Plural for your website text. And it's well, that feels weird because it's mainly just me, but that's more professional, but it feels a little false sometimes. So on my website, it actually kind of goes back and forth between first person singular and plural. And anyone looking at my site, it's just me, and I'm just trying to seem professional, but I am professional by myself.
No, I do the same thing, and when I used to talk to people on the phone, say, "Oh, well, we can cover that, or we can do," it. And they say, "Well, who is we?" And it's well, it is. But no, I think it's the same thing. We were just talking yesterday, unrelated, but how you always, if you're starting QuickBooks or whatever, you never start with invoice 00001.
Right.
You always start with invoice 1001, because then it looks like
you've had 1,000 other people that you've worked for.
Yeah, that you're not the third person that's ordered this stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
and then it is interesting. You were talking too about, the seasonal stuff and the quitting and, making that transition. And, I think it's the same thing up here, in like our wedding season, and you're, I think, doing a lot more kind of, like you said, the business cards and everything, kind of outside of that. But like we're extremely seasonal. And, there are months where, like my second contractors and stuff like won't hear from us. And like we just, like you said, you have to kind of know that. But kind of when you start and if you don't know the seasonality of it, it is incredibly difficult because I think a lot of people, do a couple weddings and think like, this is what I'm going to do. And they quit and they don't realize like, we don't really shoot a lot of weddings up here from November until May, unless you're, photographers and stuff kind of doing the off season stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because, I talk a lot with other wedding professionals because I'm part of some wedding groups and networking groups and whatever. And so we're chatting a lot, and almost all of them have the opposite busy schedule that I have because I'm busy during the non-actual wedding season. So my summers are usually my slow time, which is actually a great time to be slow, to enjoy the nice weather. But yeah, it's usually opposite for me because everyone's printing the whole rest of the year. But summers, it's already done.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, you're not printing too many, sets in, end of July or something. They needed to be out a long time ago.
Yeah, August is usually my slowest month, except for this year for some reason.
Having done this as long as you have, are there some big, trends that you've seen kind of come and go, or where you kind of see things nowadays? I just feel like you've kind of just seen a lot, and with kind of coming back from the recession and people spending money again on weddings and stuff. And what's it been like, kind of just experiencing the last 10 years as a small business owner?
Yeah, I mean, trends change a lot, and staying on top of that is, takes up a lot of my Instagram feed. I follow a lot of other people in my field and just kind of look around and see new things occasionally. And, a lot of times it'll be my clients though, who have been like, hey, I've seen this thing. I'm like, oh, that is really cool. Let's do that. Blind deboss has become a little more popular recently, where typically you don't use ink at all, but I use a tiny bit of gray ink. And so it just looks pressed into the paper. And so obviously you're not usually doing that for the text part, but you'll do it for a graphic element. And it has this really cool effect that really shows off letterpress. So that's become a little more popular. I love like the sort of floral things that are coming from the whole border, like they surround everything sort of botanical, leafy things. I don't know. It's been interesting moving from the Bay Area to here, the sort of different imagery that is prevalent. So in Northern California, redwoods. A lot of people are getting married outdoors. There's redwoods around. So I did tons of redwood imagery. And here, everyone likes, more like ferns and Mount Hood and things like that. And so I think I've noticed more a change in the regional taste than I have even just over time. Fonts, I would say, have changed most over time in a way that I could have a hard time verbalizing what that change is, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah, we were doing the video. I just said yesterday to a corporate client, and they needed the font changed at the beginning. I said, well, do you guys, a lot of times they'll have, people have like a font type that's theirs or whatever. And they said, oh, just something modern. And they listed off a couple. And I was like, I guess those are modern fonts now. I don't know. I think, what is it? The slimming. I just read a whole article the other day about how Android changed like their whole typeface and everything. I guess that was a big deal, because it's like the largest cell phone manufacturer in the world. Changing their fonts is a big deal, apparently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's funny how just the world around you changing fonts slightly will affect your own tastes. Just like high-waisted pants are coming back. It's like, do we like that now? I don't know. I have to see it a lot more. And then when I see it a lot more, I'm like, yeah, okay, I see it. Same thing kind of with fonts. I think the more you see it around, the more you start appreciating it, and it kind of ekes its way into your personal taste. I mean, not always. I mean, sometimes you see stuff and you're like, oh God, when will this be over? So I won't name any particular fonts in case people out there like those fonts, but I'm really over some particular fonts.
Like, what was it when Comic Sans was like all the rage
Oh,
and everything?
God. Or when how Papyrus has been totally slammed.
Yeah.
The worst font.
The whole Avatar thing,
Right. Yeah.
No, it's so funny. I have a guy that does a lot of our graphic work, and he lives in, I think he lives in Croatia now, and we just do stuff online, and we print locally, but he'll design it all. And his English is very short, and so I'll say something, and he'll just be like, "No, that is not in good taste. Like, we can't do that." And I'll be like, "Okay, I don't, I'm like, you're the expert." He's like,
Right.
we can't do outlines anymore on that. That is not, that will not look good. I said, okay, this is sure, man. So where do you see kind of, growing here in the next, obviously, relocating, a business, I think is a tremendously huge endeavor. And, where do you kind of see yourself growing now in the next couple of years? Is it just continuing to grow a steady client base, or where would you like to see yourself in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think mainly my growth expectations are around, growing clients and growing referrals and growing a name for myself. Like I said, I'm happy with the size I am. I like being a small business. And yeah, I don't even want the overhead of a storefront, which would raise my costs all around. And I like being able to be reasonably priced, and which is easier to do working out of your garage than it is with a storefront you have to pay for. And rents around here are pretty expensive. So
you have a pretty extensive kind of list on your website of things you enjoy doing, when you're not running your business. Do you want to talk about kind of some of the interests you have? And obviously you said you're married, and kind of what you guys do.
Yeah, we're pretty active. Probably more active than my husband would choose to be, but he's kind enough to come along with me on a lot of things. I like rock climbing, but I don't do outdoor, so I don't even know if you can call it rock climbing, but I do indoor rock climbing for the last 6 or so years, and I love it. So I do that like once a week. I garden obsessively, and my husband recently said, looking out into our garden, he's like, so this is really the reason you wanted to own a house, isn't it? And he's like, I didn't realize that at the time, because I've always had tons of houseplants. Like, I like living in a little jungle, but now it's kind of become more about the outdoor plants. And yeah, I mean, I destroy my back working on these things, but I love the excuse to be outside. And yeah, and there's just beautiful options of things you can grow here. And I love how pretty it is in the spring. And so we go on hikes, take a look around. Got an inflatable kayak, so we can go kayaking around. And my sister got one too, so she could join us. And I don't know, we went to the Thorns game for the first time and decided we're Thorns fans. So.
What is the Thorns?
The women's soccer team.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so they play. Yeah, we have I think it's the rain up here. I'm not a big soccer guy, man or woman.
Yeah, I haven't been historically, but it was really fun to go to this game. I would suggest trying it. I mean, I've not been to a Timbers game, but my sister has, and she says that's awesome too.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I don't know, just typical outdoor stuff. Yeah, a lot of plants.
Yeah, a lot of plants, and enjoying the Pacific Northwest. What do you wish more people knew about you? It could be, letterpress, something you feel like you have to, educate clients on. What is one thing that you, as kind of a final takeaway from this that you wish people knew more about you or your process?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is just one tip that would come up is for people planning to do wedding invites is you only need as many invites as addresses going out. Often people will write me saying they need 200 and it ends up they need like more like 125. So sometimes that's good to know beforehand, just so you're not like, oh, this is out of my budget because you're looking at the quantity of 200 versus what I actually need. More about me. I'm easy to work with and I make the process as painless as possible. And I'm really kind of a people pleaser in a way that is great for a business. So I want everyone to be happy. I want them to love it. Like, I love it when I hand over a job and the client is like radiant and hugs me out of just like joy. And then you get to see how excited they are about like, here's a physical proof that we're getting married. And it's like, I think it's one of the first exciting parts of the process. And I like being part of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I laughed too because we totally did that when we printed our invites and we had way more than we needed.
Yeah.
So we are definitely guilty of that same.
Totally typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and taking some time. And, whether it's, you're a little slower or not this time of the year, it's still a huge, appreciation to come on and kind of share your story and more about what you do. If you want people to learn more about you and your work and check out your website and Instagram and everything else, where would you have them go?
My website is rebpeterspress.com, and it's Reb, R-E-B, like the first three letters of Rebecca. People often mishear it as Red, which is an actual word. And then Instagram is Reb Peters Letter Press. And thanks so much for having me. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah, it was great connecting. Thanks again for, just like I said, it's so nice to branch out and, we try to get people out of Portland a lot and making these connections is great and it's so valuable. So I just want to thank you so much for doing that.
Okay, thanks.
This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you're like Rebecca and you're interested in coming on the podcast, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. There's a nice, easy questionnaire that Rebecca filled out as well and kind of gets you in the system and so we can get you scheduled. And again, thank you so much. This has been another episode. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.